When a person consumes food, as I just did in the previous video, it enters the digestive system where it is then broken down into glucose. Glucose is a simple sugar or a monosaccharide that travels through the bloodstream. When glucose levels rise, it activates the release of the hormone insulin, which takes glucose out of the blood, and glucose levels return to normal. Insulin is important in our body because it maintains homeostasis of glucose levels. If glucose levels were to rise, it could lead to diabetes, which we will dive into later on in this video. In the picture shown above, you can see the molecule of insulin, thanks to Chimera, and the insulin ID number that I used to find this image is 4INS. Glucose is important as it provides cells with energy. For glucose to get into the body cells, it requires insulin. Insulin, which is produced in the pancreas, binds with insulin receptors that signals the cell to activate glucose transporters, which then pull glucose through the cell walls and delivers energy to the body cells. More specifically, GLUT4 is a protein encoded by humans and is the insulin-regulated glucose transporter. This glucose transporter permits the facilitated diffusion of circulating glucose down its concentration gradient into muscle and fat cells. Like all proteins, the unique amino acid arrangement and the primary structure of GLUT4 is what allows it to transport glucose across the plasma membrane.
I've been thinking such a long time. I feel like so lightheaded. In the previous video, you watched as I passed out on the couch, and that is because I had a low blood glucose level because I had not eaten in a while. When this occurs, alpha cells from the pancreas will release a hormone commonly known as glucagon. Glucagon enters the bloodstream and acts on target cells in the liver. Glucagon will then bind to receptors on the liver. This will then tell the liver cells to break glycogen through a process commonly known as hydrolysis down to glucose. Then glucose is released into the bloodstream, and the original low blood glucose levels are now at normal levels. And as a result, less glucagon is released in the blood. Diabetes is a very prevalent issue in today's society, and it affects approximately 29.1 million people. It is a disease where certain individuals cannot maintain certain glucose levels. There are two main types of diabetes. The first one is type 2 diabetes, and this mainly occurs in adults that are overweight. People with this form of diabetes are still able to produce insulin. However, their main issue is that when insulin binds to the liver receptors, glucose is not taken up by the target cells. Since the glucose is not absorbed, excess glucose is in the bloodstream, which then causes these individuals with this disease to have high blood sugar. Some options for treatment could include exercising, healthy diets, and taking medication.
The before and after picture of the young boy we discussed in class shows him appearing to be very thin in one picture, whereas after a few months he appears to be healthy. We determined that this boy has a condition that is very common in children known as type 1 diabetes.
This disease is where the body is unable to maintain blood glucose levels because it cannot produce insulin. More specifically, people with this disease cannot make insulin because the beta cells that produce insulin have been destroyed by the immune system.
Some symptoms of type 1 diabetes is extreme thirst, frequent urination, increased appetite, heavy or labored breathing, sudden weight loss, blurred vision, and many more.
Some treatments for type 1 diabetes can be manual insertion of insulin via needles and insulin pumps, and they must check their blood glucose levels at least 7 to 9 times a day, or they can wear a continuous glucose monitor, and they must maintain a healthy diet and exercise frequently.
Homeostasis is the state of steady internal conditions maintained by living things. Feedback mechanisms are vital control mechanisms for the body's homeostasis. There are two types of feedback mechanisms, positive and negative. A negative feedback mechanism is a control system that helps the body maintain homeostasis by sending a signal to stop a response. For instance, insulin causes blood glucose levels to decrease. A positive feedback mechanism is a control system that sends a signal to increase a response. Maintaining homeostasis is important because cells depend on the body's environment to live and function. Diabetes is the failure of the negative feedback mechanism and results in high blood glucose levels, which have a variety of negative health effects such as heart disease and high blood pressure.
Gestational diabetes occurs in pregnant women who have never had diabetes before, but who have high blood glucose levels during pregnancy. As of now, there are no exact causes of gestational diabetes, but they do have one idea. Since the placenta supports the baby as it grows and hormones from the placenta help the body develop, they believe that these hormones that are helping the baby develop also block the action of the mother's insulin in her body, also known as insulin resistance. Insulin resistance then makes it hard for the mother's body to use insulin. Some symptoms of gestational diabetes can be excessive hunger, thirst, fatigue, and other symptoms. Treatments include a healthy diet, monitoring glucose levels daily, exercise, and medication. Hannah and I would greatly like to thank PDB, Chimera, Unipro, and most importantly, Miss Capolino for her great knowledge. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed our presentation.